October 25th, 1944. 06:58 hours. Off Samar, east of the Philippine island of Leyte. Tropical rain hangs low over the Philippine Sea, drifting in sheets. The air smells like diesel and wet cordite. The escort carrier USS Gambier Bay is turning hard to port, her wooden flight deck vibrating under the weight of fully armed TBM Avengers trying to get airborne in a hurry. Below, sailors run with belts of .50 caliber shouting over the rising scream of radial engines. To the men of Task Unit 77-4.3, Taffy 3. This morning began like any other launch, close air support for the troops going ashore on Leyte. Then on the radar scopes and in the morning haze, something appears that should not exist here. Battleships. Big ones. Jesus Christ, one lookout whispers, not even realizing he said it out loud. Off the starboard quarter, through a break in the rain, squall dark shapes materialize on the horizon, too fast, too heavy, too wrong. Tall pagoda masts, triple turrets, huge orange muzzle flashes, like camera bulbs going off in hell. A second later, the first Japanese 18.1-inch armor-piercing shells from the battleship Yamato scream overhead at nearly twice the speed of sound. They don't just pass. They tear the sky. When they land, the impacts don't sound like explosions. They sound like buildings collapsing. Taffy 3's commander, Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, stares in disbelief. The math is impossible. His entire force is 6 escort carriers, half the size and 1/3 the speed of fleet carriers, plus 3 destroyers, Johnston, Hoel, Heermann, and 4 destroyer escorts. Samuel B. Roberts, Raymond Dennis, John C. Butler. They are built for anti-submarine work and air support for landings. Thin-skinned, lightly armed. Sailors call them tin cans because their hull plating is so light you could almost punch through it. Bearing down on them at flank speed is Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force, Yamato, Nagato, Kongō, Haruna. Heavy cruisers like Chokai, Chikuma, Suzuya. Dozens of 8-inch and 14-inch guns. The most concentrated surface firepower left in the Imperial Japanese Navy after 3 brutal years of war in the Pacific. This should not be happening. According to American naval intelligence and the war plan for Leyte Kurita's battleships were supposed to be either sunk in the Sibuyan Sea yesterday or still bottled up to the west. And yet here they are, alive, angry, and less than 20 miles away from unarmored jeep carriers full of fuel bombs and Avenger torpedo planes. Open fire Sprague orders. That's not bravado. That's survival. On USS Johnston DD 557, Commander Ernest E. Evans is already moving before the order even finishes crackling over TBS radio. Evans is a Cherokee, Oklahoma tough, barrel-chested, known for saying exactly what he means and never dressing it up. On commissioning day, he told his crew, "This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way. And if I lose my ship, I want to go down with it." Some of the men thought it was theater. This morning they learn it wasn't theater. Johnston jerks into a tight turn, spray blasting over her bow. Her 5-inch 38 guns begin hammering at the leading Japanese heavy cruiser, 4, 5, 6 rounds per gun per minute, a ridiculous act on paper. A 5-inch shell can punch holes in superstructure, start fires, wreck optics. But against an armored cruiser hull, it's like throwing gravel at a bank vault. But Evans isn't trying to kill a cruiser with 5-inch guns. He's trying to make that cruiser blink. On the carrier decks astern, Wildcats and Avengers are clawing into the air without full fuel, sometimes without bombs properly fused. Pilots are taking off because staying aboard means dying in a fireball when the first 14-inch shell walks in. One pilot is heard on the net. What are my orders? The answer is brutal and simple. Attack the biggest thing you can see. Repeat the biggest thing you can see. Out on the horizon, Yamato's second salvo lands closer. White towers of water leap up in a row, marching toward the carriers. Those splashes are 3,000-pound armor-piercing shells digging into the sea and detonating underwater. Each one could pass through a destroyer from bow to stern and still have enough energy to exit. Sprague watches the fall of shot and realizes something the Japanese are ranging in. Once they have the range, the next bracket lands on steel, not water. So he makes the only move left. He orders smoke. Immediately, destroyers and escorts lay thick curtains of chemical smoke, carving walls between the escort carriers and the pursuing battleships. The ocean turns into a drifting maze of gray-white fog banks. Through it, the tin cans weave like angry hornets, coughing smoke and spitting 5-inch fire. On paper, this is a delaying action. In reality, it's a knife fight. Johnston surges ahead, bow-knifing through the chop. Evans is driving his 2 100-ton destroyer, basically a fast gun platform wrapped around a boiler, straight at a Japanese column that outweighs him by hundreds of thousands of tons. "Range to lead cruiser," he barks. 10,000 yards and closing torpedo run, Evans says. Someone on Johnston's bridge actually laughs, a short, stunned sound. Because to close to torpedo range against Japanese heavy cruisers in daylight, in clear water, in gun range of Yamato. That isn't doctrine. That's suicide. Evans doesn't blink. Full ahead. Commence torpedo attack. And just like that, a single destroyer breaks formation and charges. You can almost feel the moment aboard the Japanese ships. Men in black and white bridge photos later will claim they thought at first that these American escorts were fleeing. Fleeing made sense. These were carriers without armor, guarded by destroyers so light, the Japanese contemptuously called them small fry. But that's not what's happening in front of them. The small fry are turning in. Taffy 3 isn't running. Taffy 3 is attacking. 07, 10 hours. On USS Johnston, the deck is already slick with spray and blood. A near miss from an 8-inch cruiser shell has peppered the forward superstructure with shrapnel tearing through flesh like hot wire. Communications lines are cut. One of the forward guns has gone momentarily silent, smoke pouring out of the mount. The ship shudders, then steadies. Men are yelling for a corpsman. Men are still at their posts. "Get me manual control," someone shouts in the aft handling room. Up on the bridge, Commander Ernest Evans is calm in a way that reads almost unnatural. He's standing exposed, wind tearing at his hair, binoculars resting against his chest on their strap. He's missing 2 fingers from a previous accident in the line of fact his crew knows well. Right now, those scarred hands rest on the bridge, combing like he's driving a car through an intersection, not charging 4 battleships and 6 heavy cruisers. Range he demands. Torpedo director reports 9,000 yards. 8,800. Closing fast. 8,000 yards is nothing at sea. It's knife-fighting distance. It's inside the envelope where an 8-inch AP round doesn't even have time to arc it, just punches. Johnston's 5.5-inch .38s are firing so fast that the barrels glow dull red. Spent casings clatter and roll across hot steel. The forward director is walking fire up the superstructure of the lead Japanese heavy cruiser, likely Kumano or Suzuya, smashing rangefinders, radar, aerials, bridge wings. Evans isn't trying to sink her with gunfire. He's trying to blind her panic, her throw off her aim at the escort carriers. Enemy cruiser firing, someone calls. There's no time to brace. A bursting column of flame and steel rips across Johnston's bow. The blast picks men up and slams them back down. Panels shatter, paint catches. For a moment, visibility is nothing but smoke and orange light. Johnston keeps coming. Torpedo mounts stand by. Evans says, voice steady. "Spread fire. All fish." American destroyers in 1944 carry the Mark 15 steam torpedo, 24 feet long, more than 800 pounds of torpex in the warhead. At this range, one hit can tear open a cruiser like a can opener tearing the seam of a sardine tin. Evans makes his decision. Fire. On Johnston's deck, the port side quintuple tube mount recoils, belching white plume and heat shimmer. Torpedo 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5. Drop clean into the wake, then leap forward, leaving long, pale wakes like claw marks across the blue-gray water. The destroyer heels hard over to port, putting her stern to the Japanese line and throwing up a wall of smoke. Evans wants to present the smallest possible silhouette, while those torpedoes run hot, straight and normal. Through his binoculars, he watches. 8,000 yards. 7,000. 6. On the Japanese flagship bridge, this does not look like a screening force delaying for time. It looks like insanity. Reports begin flying up the voice tubes and through the shouting gunnery tops of Kurita's center force. Enemy carriers sighted to the east. Small carriers lightly defended. Multiple destroyers attacking. Torpedoes in the water. That last one, that's the one that matters. To a battleship captain, torpedoes in the water is an alarm that lives in the spine. You don't argue with it. You maneuver now, or you gamble the lives of 2,000 men on the hope that the Americans missed. And so, giant ships turn. Yamato, 72,000 tons, fully loaded, the heaviest battleship ever built, begins a turn to avoid what might be a fan of incoming torpedoes. The rest of Kurita's line scatters slightly formations, loosening firing solutions, having to be recalculated from scratch. Gunnery officers swear and redial ranges. Plotters pull grease pencils across rangekeeper boards and curse the new angles. Secondary batteries lose their continuous walk of fire on the American carriers. For a few minutes, just a few chaos favors the small. That's all Sprague needs. From the American side, that moment looks like a miracle. The biggest battleship in the world forced off her gun line by a single wounded destroyer that cost less than one of Yamato's turrets. Johnston to all Taffy 3 units, comes the damaged, half-garbled voice on TBS. We're engaging heavy cruisers with torpedoes. Give 'em hell. The voice is Evans. He's still alive. He's still fighting. Aboard the escort carriers, the flight decks are almost clear now. Avengers are off. Wildcats are off. Pilots who launched without armor-piercing bombs improvise. They strafe bridge windows, rake AA crews, even drop depth charges set to explode on contact against cruiser topsides. This is not standard Navy procedure. This is desperation as a tactic. And it works because desperation is loud. From high above, an Avenger pilot watches Johnston's torpedo wakes converge toward a cruiser trying to comb their tracks. One of the Japanese heavies erupts at the bowsprit, then smoke, then orange flame licking up and back along the forecastle. The ship slews out of line speed, falling. Whether that was a direct hit or steering wrecked by near-miss concussion almost doesn't matter. A cruiser pulled out of formation is a cruiser not firing at Gambier Bay. Evans's destroyer has bought them breathing room. But he's paid for it. Johnston is hit again. This time the shells smash below the waterline. The ship shivers. Lights flicker. One engine room floods. Speed drops. She had been making over 30 knots on her attack run. Now she struggles to hold 17. Her rudder feels sluggish. Her wake is streaked with oil. On the bridge, someone says quietly, "We can't do that again." Evans doesn't answer. He just wipes blood his own from shrapnel tearing into his face and torso out of his eyes and squints back at the Japanese line. He can see the towering masts through the drifting smoke. He can see their muzzle flashes. He can also see something else. Hoel and Heermann, the other 2 destroyers, are turning in. And behind them, something no one on either side expects a destroyer escort is accelerating to flank, charging straight into main battery fire like a rabid terrier. USS Samuel B. Roberts, DE 413. Crew nickname the Sammy B. Displacement, 350 tons. Barely. On paper, Samuel B. Roberts is a sub-chaser. Thin skin, two 5-inch guns, no business whatsoever closing with battleships. But Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland has already told his men, "We're going in, we're going to attack, we're making a torpedo run." One gunner on the Samuel B will later describe it like this: "It felt like riding a beer can at a freight train." The little destroyer escort surges ahead, bow knifing into its own smoke engines pushed beyond design limits. Her 5-inch gun barks so fast it sounds like ripping canvas. She aims at a Japanese heavy cruiser with the calm hatred of a man throwing a chair at a tiger. Taffy 3 is no longer just delaying. Taffy 3 is now visibly, undeniably counterattacking. Through 35 hours. The battle off Samar has stopped being a naval engagement in the traditional sense. It is now an act of collective defiance. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague from his flagship Fanshawe Bay is trying to hold a scattered bleeding formation together over voice radio, while also keeping his escort carriers alive long enough for their aircraft to keep harassing Kurita. His orders are clipped urgent, almost apologetic. Small boys attack. Torpedo attack. Smoke. Keep between us and them. Small boys. That's what the U.S. Navy calls destroyers and escorts. You can hear it in the voice traffic. Every man on those small boys understands exactly what he's being asked to do. He's being asked to die slower than the carriers. USS Hoel DD-533 goes in first, charging the nearest column of Japanese heavy cruisers through sheets of rain and smoke. Shells begin walking their way down her deck. An 8-inch armor-piercing round punches through, detonates inside rips. Compartments apart, blows men into passageways. Hoel staggers, lists, corrects, and keeps launching torpedoes. She's hit again. Her bridge is wrecked. Fire blooms out of her midships like a furnace door kicked open. And still, she keeps coming. USS Heermann DD-532 follows, threading through geysers of shell splashes so close they throw seawater over her stacks. Heermann's skipper, CMDR, Amos Hathaway, points his destroyer at a battleship. Not a cruiser, a battleship, and fires a spread of torpedoes at Kongō. In any other navy, on any other ocean, that would be a suicide note. Here it's a message: you do not just walk through us. Samuel B. Roberts is already in the thick of it. Lieutenant Commander Copeland has ordered flank speed from engines that were never meant to deliver it, and his crew is physically feeding ammunition to the 5-inch gun to keep up the rate of fire. The Samuel B is swerving, sprinting, firing, swerving again. Her shells are walking up the hull of a heavy cruiser. Likely Chokai or Chikuma blowing open radar sets, start fires, knock out gun crews. A destroyer escort is for a brief moment beating up a heavy cruiser. One of the Roberts crewmen later remembered watching the range tick down to under 6,000 yards and thinking with total clarity, "We're too close. We are absolutely too close for them to miss us now." And still, they did not stop. Because every second the Samuel B lives is another second a Japanese cruiser is dealing with flames instead of lining up the escort carriers at 18,000 yards. Overhead American planes keep diving in. These are not clean doctrinal strikes. This is improvisation under panic. Avengers that launched with depth charges meant for submarines are now dropping those depth charges on cruisers and battleship decks, fusing them shallow so they pop at or just above impact. Some bombs bounce, some roll, some go off in sheets of spray that drench exposed anti-aircraft crews in boiling fragments. Wildcats slash in at mast height, chewing open gunnery directors with .50 caliber. One pilot radios, "I am out of ammo. I'm going to make dummy runs to distract." That means he is now deliberately pretending to strafe just to force Japanese gunners to keep their heads down and look up instead of aim out. From Kurita's flag bridge, this does not look like mopping up. It looks like chaos. It looks like an ambush. It looks, and this is critical, like he might not be facing 6 slow escort carriers and a few screening destroyers. It looks like he might be under attack by carrier groups, plural. Reports are confused. In the rain squalls and smoke banks, a Casablanca-class escort carrier can be mistaken at range and under stress for a light fleet carrier. The sheer volume of air buzzing his forced torpedo bombers from multiple bearings fighters making repeated gun runs suggests to Kurita that he has stumbled into the teeth of a much larger American covering force. That assumption is wrong. But it saves Taffy 3's life. On the American side, the cost is being paid in real time. USS Hoel is slowing. She's been hit over and over. Her superstructure looks like an open wound. Her after-gun mounts are either blown off or burning. Men are dragging wounded shipmates through knee-deep water in the passageways, trying to get them topside before the compartments seal with smoke. Hull is still firing what guns she has left. Her torpedo mounts are empty. At 08:00, staring down accurate cruiser fire and flooding that cannot be contained. Hoel finally gives up her last buoyancy. She rolls, pauses, and then slides under stern first. Survivors in the water look up and see Japanese shells still walking across the surface, still trying to hit an American destroyer that is already gone. Samuel B. Roberts fights like a thing possessed. Her single 5-inch gun is firing so fast that the crew later estimates and after-action analysis supports that they hit the mechanical limit of the mount over 40 rounds a minute in bursts. She is punching above her weight class, visibly. She is also being ripped apart. An 8-inch shell slams in at waterline, blowing open machinery spaces. Another takes out her forward section. Her decks are chewed by shrapnel. Men are bleeding out while still passing ammunition by hand. Copeland refuses to break off. At 08:30 with the Samuel B, dead in the water, listing hard decks awash, Copeland gives the order to abandon ship. He keys the radio one last time and says something that will be remembered for the rest of U.S. naval history. "This is Samuel B. We're going down fighting." He is not exaggerating. The destroyer escort will slip beneath the surface, having traded herself for minutes, just minutes of confusion, hesitation, anger, and fear on the Japanese side. Minutes that Taffy 3 is using to survive. USS Gambier Bay does not get out. The only American carrier ever sunk by naval gunfire in World War II. Gambier Bay takes repeated cruiser hits that shatter her thin hull. She tries to weave, tries to throw smoke, tries to run behind squalls. At 08:20, she is bracketed, holed, and burning. Her speed bleeds off. Her wake flattens. She starts to fall behind the rest of the formation. The Japanese gunners close in. Her crew abandons ship into oil-streaked water while still under fire. Sailors slide down lines into the sea and kick hard to get clear of suction. Some of them look back and see their carrier rolling her flight deck, tilting like a sinking pier aircraft, still chained to the deck, sliding. The men in the water expect to die next. Then something happens that none of them in that moment truly believe. At 09:20, Kurita orders his force to break off pursuit. Not press the attack, not finish the kill. Break off. Japanese battleships and cruisers begin to turn away, back toward the San Bernardino Strait. Sprague doesn't quite believe it either. On the TBS, voices that had been tight and clipped and choking with smoke are suddenly incredulous. They're turning away. Repeat. The enemy is... They're turning away. Why? Because from Kurita's bridge through haze and fury and damage reports, the map no longer looks like a clean breakthrough. It looks like a trap. He has lost cruisers. Others are damaged and afire. His formation is scattered and low on organized ammunition. He's under constant air harassment. And every time he tried to line up those slow American carriers for the easy kill, another American destroyer threw itself in the way and launched torpedoes. Kurita cannot know in that moment that he is one hard push away from annihilating the only thing between his battleships and the thin-skinned, fuel-heavy invasion, shipping off Leyte. He only knows this if there are more tin cans like these ahead. If there are fleet carriers behind that smoke, he might be sailing his last battleships into slaughter. So he turns away. And with that single decision, the U.S. landings on Leyte, and with them, MacArthur's return to the Philippines, are saved. Late morning, October 25, 1944. The rain squalls over Samar, still drift like torn curtains. The sea is littered with oil, broken planking cork life jackets, spent 5-inch casings, torn signal flags, and men. Everywhere men. Some are burned. Some are bleeding. Some are floating motionless in kapok vests, faces to the sky. The battle has stopped. The dying hasn't. The crew of USS Hoel, what is left of them, is treading water in seas patrolled by both sharks and occasionally Japanese float planes. Survivors of Gambier Bay cling to debris, watching the last bubbles of their ship rise to the surface and drift apart. Handheld signal mirrors flash in the sun and disappear behind wave crests. Oil coats skin and stings the eyes. Salt water runs into open wounds. Time stretches. For many of them, rescue will not come for hours. For some, rescue will not come at all. Among the ships still afloat, damage control is now the only battle that matters. USS Heermann limps away, trailing smoke decks scorched and twisted paint blackened from near misses that would have gutted a bigger ship. She is unbelievably still moving. She has fired her torpedoes, fought battleships, run head-on at cruisers, weaved through 14-inch shell splashes, and lived. Heermann will be the only one of the 3 attacking destroyers to survive the day. USS Johnston is not so lucky. Johnston has been taking punishment non-stop since her solo charge at Kurita's cruisers just after 7 Hubris. Her superstructure is shredded by shrapnel. Her forward guns have fallen silent, one after another, as power lines are cut and gun crews are killed at their mounts. One engine room is flooded. Her top speed is gone. Her rudder is sluggish. Her radios are barely holding together. Men are fighting fires with buckets and bare hands. By late morning, she's listing bleeding oil, barely answering her helm. On the bridge, Commander Ernest E. Evans, shrapnel in his face, his clothes soaked with his own blood, is still giving orders. Johnston's final minutes are strangely quiet compared to the storm she charged into. She is no longer a threat, so the Japanese gunners have moved their fire elsewhere. The destroyer rocks in the swells, smoke feathering off her in the tropical air. Bulkheads groan. Abandon ship, Evans orders. There is no drama in the way he says it. No theatrics. Just necessity. Sailors move fast. Wounded men are carried slung, pushed to the lifelines. Rafts are kicked free. Some of the crew hesitate. You don't easily step off the deck you fought from. One sailor looks back along the length of Johnston and realizes he can see daylight where steel used to be. The ship looks chewed. Evans is last seen on the fantail, near the stern, still trying to make sure as many men get off as possible. He's not observed to take a life jacket for himself. Johnston rolls to starboard and slides under. In the water, men from Hoel, Gambier Bay, and now Johnston, float within earshot of one another, calling across swells. Where are you from, Frisco? You see the Samuel B. They talk like that to stay awake. Because the sun is high now and the salt burns, and exhaustion comes in waves every bit as real as the Pacific rolling under them. Samuel B. Roberts is gone too. The Samuel B fought a heavy cruiser to a standstill with a single 5-inch gun, hit emergency flank on engines meant for convoy escort duty, and refused to break off even when she was holed and flooding. She finally rolled and sank around 09:35. Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland survived. Many of his men did not. Back with the surviving carriers, the scale of what just happened is only starting to process. Rear Admiral Clifton Ziggy Sprague looks out over a formation that isn't really a formation anymore. He has escort carriers with shell holes punched through their sides so big you could fly an airplane through them. He has decks scorched black. He has crews still manning anti-air guns because they don't trust the sky to stay clear. He has pilots in the air low on fuel circling looking for somewhere to land that isn't on fire. He keys the radio and sends a contact report that is equal parts information and disbelief. Enemy battleships and cruisers engaged. Enemy turned away. Situation critical. Am engaging with all units. That report will travel fast. Because when the full picture is reconstructed hours later, in clear daylight, the cold math of Samar becomes visible. On one side, Yamato, the largest battleship ever put to sea, plus Nagato Kongō Haruna, heavy cruisers, light cruisers, destroyers. On the other side, 6 jeep carriers, each carrying slow TBM Avengers and FM-2 Wildcats for ground support, not fleet defense. 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts. It should not have been a battle. It should have been an execution. Instead, Kurita broke off. Why? Ask 5 surviving officers, and you'll get 5 answers. All of them honest, all of them true from where they were standing. We convinced him we were a carrier task force. Sprague's surviving flyers will argue this. From altitude with smoke with multiple squadrons diving from different bearings, Taffy 3 looked like more than 6 CVEs. It looked like the advance guard of something bigger. Kurita had already been hammered the day before in the Sibuyan Sea. He had lost Musashi Yamato's sister to waves of American carrier planes. He knew what concentrated American carrier air power could do. He could not afford to sail Yamato and the last of Japan's battle line into a massed carrier trap if this Taffy was just the bait. We hit them in the mouth and made them bleed. Ask a gunner's mate from the Samuel B and he'll tell you flat, we hurt him. And he's not wrong. Japanese cruisers, Chokai Chikuma and Suzuya, were wrecked, burning, or lost as a result of gunfire torpedoes and relentless air harassment from Sprague's tiny carriers and tin cans. Even Yamato, the terror of every intelligence briefing, had to sheer off under torpedo threat. The center force did not punch through untouched. We scared them into thinking there were more of us than there really were. Some of Kurita's own officers after the war admitted that what they ran into off Samar was not what they expected. They thought they had slipped through San Bernardino Strait undetected. They thought they were about to kill helpless transports off Leyte and smash MacArthur's beachhead. Instead, they ran into a screen that wasn't supposed to exist. A screen that attacked so aggressively that it looked like a deliberate trap. But beneath all of those answers is a simpler truth felt by every man on those tin cans that morning. They just refused. They refused to let those escort carriers die quietly. They refused to give Kurita a clear shot. They refused to act the way their tonnage said they should act. They chose to attack instead of retreat. And that refusal, that decision made bridge by bridge, captain by captain, gun crew by gun crew, in the middle of screaming metal and geysers of white water, changed the outcome of the largest naval battle of World War II. Yes, the largest. The Battle of Leyte Gulf. October 23 to 26, 1944, is the biggest naval battle in history in terms of tonnage and area of engagement. Off Samar, one slice of that battle was decided not by armor thickness or gun caliber, but by will. History will remember that. History will give names. Commander Ernest E. Evans, USS Johnston, awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. The citation will say, he fighting gallantly in the face of overwhelming odds, contributed materially to saving the CVEs of Task Unit 77.4.3. Lieutenant Commander Robert W. Copeland, USS Samuel B. Roberts, Navy Cross, for charging a heavy cruiser in what his own crew called a DE with the heart of a battleship. Rear Admiral Clifton A.F. Sprague, Navy Cross, for holding the line with carriers that weren't meant to be battle carriers at all. And the crew's gun captains with burned hands who would not leave their mounts. Firemen waist-deep in flooding machinery spaces, keeping steam pressure long enough for one last burst of speed. Radiomen with headsets full of static relaying orders that sent them straight toward Yamato. When post-war analysts and historians lay out maps of Leyte Gulf, it's easy to draw clean arrows. Center force advances from San Bernardino Strait. Taffy 3 withdraws to the east. Kurita retires to the northwest. Simple. The ocean that morning was not simple. The ocean that morning was a knife pressed against America's throat and held back by men inside ships so thin their own navy called them tin cans. In the years after the war, survivors would talk about that morning in two different tones. Sometimes with quiet pride, we stopped battleships with 5-inch guns. Sometimes with something closer to disbelief, we lived. And sometimes, most times, they talked about the ones who didn't live. Because the last sound many of them remember from October 25, 1944, off Samar, is not gunfire, not explosions, not the scream of shells passing low over the water. It's the voices across the waves after the battle ended, calling to each other. Hey, over here. Keep your head up. Just hang on.